So everybody, welcome to our first Quantum Constellations meeting. And so I had a download because that's how I operate, and I trust them that I had to do quantum constellations with Selen. And why with Selen? Because I think the people that are really working with the quantum potentials and who literally embrace the concept of creatorship, we probably, I would say, look at something as a subject as entanglement in a different way, because we are aware that apart from the past and the interconnectedness with the consciousness of our families and ancestors and countries we came from, that there's also the quantum potential and the larger quantum field and different levels of reality that we can tune into that could possibly assist us in our healing. And this is why I couldn't choose anybody else than Selen, because I know from my time when I met her and from the time that I also worked with her when I was going through a deep dark night of the soul in 2020, that if there's anybody that believes in quantum possibilities, even if they haven't even appeared yet in your consciousness, it is Selen. And so I myself have had tremendous healing from working with Selen, and I've also seen her heal miraculously so-called other people while she was doing the healing on herself. And so I had a download that she had to do something with the healing potential and the quantum potentials around primarily, I would say, dis-ease or imbalances in health. And I remember when I was doing the training in 2007, 2008, 2009 in family constellations and organizational constellations, there were so many different modalities. And when I did the one about health, I had no clue what they were doing. I literally did a health constellation about my skin condition, and some really bizarre thing showed up that I didn't understand. So for me, that was not my thing. That was not my cup of tea. But I felt that because of what Selen was had as karma in terms of the health condition of, for instance, her daughter and how she then dealt with it, I felt that there was something that was in her field that was very special. And yeah, we discussed it and we said, yeah, let's do it. Let's just do some quantum. Let's just explain to people that are really looking for healing and maybe who are getting a little bit stuck, how they can work with quantum potentials in a slightly different way than just meditation. So this is why we wanted to share a question and answer session, and also with some personal stories from our own experience working with the quantum potentials as people who are trained in family constellations, systemic work, or organizational systemic work. So yeah, I hope, Selen, that gave a little bit of a feedback of why I chose you or why I downloaded that we had to work together.
Yeah, now it's my turn.
Yeah.
So yeah, Angelique and I met. I don't know how many events she had done before, many, but it was my second event in Mallorca where all the magic happened. And you see the flamingos around the photo. That's where the flamingos were initiated. So we were in a team together. We sat next to each other and we just hit it off. Like I knew, and she told me like the times that she was doing Dr. Joe's work when they were sitting around the table. It was tiny, and I was like, wow, you know. And I did have my initiation process. You know, when I was a child, I had some gifts, I think, but you know, it was not my time, so I was closed. And I had my initiation, or my family, I should say, had our initiation with our daughter. She had health issues. She had things that we could not ignore. And so we started the process of energy work, first with homeopathy, a really wonderful, wonderful way of, just being initiated into this work, I feel. And we still do actually use it. And then the last bit just didn't happen for her. She was really well, so she just couldn't heal from the gluten things, because I found out that didn't belong to her. It was my thing that I needed to heal. And that happened in my first event with Dr. Joe in 2018, November in Brighton. So after that, I really needed to understand what just happened, how I healed my fear of heights in England, and my daughter in the United States healed instantaneously. And I knew she was healed in my body, in my soul. And I went back home, and she actually ate everything as if she's been eating them normally. It was a magical process. But Angelique has a very special place in my heart, because she's as much as she says that I believed in her and we did this, all the classes and everything, but she also believed in me, and she also was a huge support in my life since the day we met. And it's really my honor to be here with her. When she asked me, I said, how can I say no to you? It's just so wonderful. And the other thing we share is that I was in her constellation before, never as a client at that time, just as representative, but something really moved within me, and I started magically representing someone in her client. And it really was a changing point for me, because I changed a belief that I had that was really, really deep for me in that constellation, because I became the role of a family member of the client. And since that day, my belief about this one issue completely changed. But I wasn't ready to do this as a job, I guess. I was doing other things, other healing methods. And then it was last summer only that, the famous Another Self not documentary, movie came out, series came out on Netflix. And within a week, I had Turkish and foreign friends reach out to me saying, you have to watch this series. So I'm saying Turkish and foreign because it's a Turkish series. And I was really surprised that my foreign friends were reaching out. And I don't watch any series because I, get too sucked up in those things. I only watch movies time to time. I was like, okay, I'll just watch this, whatever this is everybody's talking about. And it was such a beautiful series about constellations and how women's life changed and everything. And the next thing I know, I rewatched everything from the beginning, and then I contacted Angelique. I said, I need the information to study this. I'm so cold. I couldn't wait. It was so in me. And it was a very intense course that I just recently finished, but I've been still doing this professionally for 6 months now, even though I've been in the course, and it's been really wonderful. And so, and Angelique is right. There is a reason I went through something, and I need to just help others also see it. So I think it's my calling, and I've been doing that with other modalities anyway. And this is really a beautiful way of working in the field. And I have, after that or before that done some work with Angelique for myself, and it was so wonderful. And I trust her intuition in this so much. So yeah.
Yeah. I see a question here of Jeremy, which was, wow, Selen
Not a
is
question.
not a question, or more like a remark. Okay, we can actually explain that later in more detail, because it actually went even further than that. And actually, I had a download for Selen about what is going on with her and the people that she interacts with because of her consciousness. So yeah, so what is a constellation? Some of you probably know it and some of you don't know it. But a constellation, I think the next slide would actually explain that. In a constellation, we choose people or puppets or pieces of paper to represent elements in a condition. So for instance, if you would like to know about a disease, you would probably constellate, you would ask somebody to be you, or you would ask somebody to also be the issue behind your disease. And yeah, so basically what then happens is that basically what we find out mostly is that you're not alone in your disease, but you are entangled with an event, people that you don't even know, something that is going on in the family that you belong to or the groups that you belong to. And so that is called entanglement. And very often, the people that come to Constellations workshops, they have done a lot of other work. And this is almost like their last type of work because working on themselves isn't cutting it. Yeah. And this is also why I got into constellation work. So yeah, so entanglement as a concept is very important in constellations.
And an entanglement can lead to suffering because I'll just read this first, and when we are repeating certain painful patterns from generations before, which is loyalty. So, for instance, we may have a loyalty to the family system, or like a specific person in our family. For instance, it could be somebody that we have never met actually in life. It could be like great grandfather that I may be entangled with, and I will be loyal to. So basically, out of love, to show my love subconsciously to my great grandfather, I would take on some of his suffering, some of his things that he could not heal in his lifetime while he was alive. And so those are really painful and deeper than our things that belong to us, which can cause confusion because we don't understand why we have this issue, but it also is very, very painful because it's so deep.
So we talk about entanglement and loyalty and blind love in constellations. And when you actually read the books about you study the books about the case studies, you actually do find out that it is love, but it is blind love. Because the loyalty and blind love creates non-rational subconscious patterns and suffering. And non-rational because if you were thinking rationally, you would never choose this pattern. You would never take on the suffering of your ancestors or even of maybe people that you've never met or that you've never known. Nevertheless, we see it happen over and over and over again. And that is why, most of us who study family constellations, it is because we see the truth of these non-rational subconscious loyalties. They do exist too often.
Yeah, so constellation work is a beautiful, powerful, gentle way of showing us the entanglements, the blind love, and the loyalty, so that we are aware of it and we are able to energetically shift it to pure unconditional love so that we can actually love our ancestors, love the person we are loyal to, with just pure love without carrying their entanglements, their things, their unprocessed issues that they have.
So how does a constellation work? So as I said before, constellation work is often the last resort that people go to after they've tried a lot of different modalities and they still feel stuck. I was one of these people, but I went as far as to say, not only do I need to go into constellation therapy, I need to crack the code. I need to understand why, despite all my training, all my rational knowledge, because I've done a lot of trainings before constellation work on relationship dynamics, on healthy, basically creating beautiful things. I knew how to manifest things, but I was in my love life, I was always manifesting really painful dynamics, and I could literally see that I was repeating the patterns of my mother and father. And as a child, I vowed that I would never ever do that, but nevertheless, I would mysteriously always attract men or that literally made me repeat these patterns. So
yeah, so imagine a family tree like you're seeing here, and we are able to just put that, see this family tree on the representatives, and by just the way they're moving, they're acting, and it's not an act, but by the way they are, in order to just watch, like a movie, our own life, and see the hidden patterns, the issues that we have, and the pain, feel the pain, and feel the pain of our ancestor or our family member who actually is going through that or was going through that when they were alive, and the fate that we are carrying. That in that way we do have control of changing it into, do I want to continue carrying this, or do I want to heal this entanglement? I always like to call it like a knot. It's a knot that we're just kind of undoing, and the rest is just happening energetically in a smooth and easy way. So yeah, so that really helps us in constellations.
So basically, constellation work is able to show us that there can often be blind loyalties preventing us to free ourselves from struggle, victimhood, and scarcity consciousness. So imagine that you want to, let's say you want to feel very successful in life in terms of, let's say, relationships, like I did. But you have a family where there's a victim consciousness between the husband and wife. If you find yourself in that type of family, my blind loyalty was to be a victim. And it didn't matter how many trainings I went to, I would literally be in a relationship and I would switch into victim. I would literally switch into victim. And it was like I was hijacked. My brain was hijacked and I would act like a victim and all the trainings would be like gone. And so you can spend a lot of money on therapy when you do this, when you don't understand that actually you're just being blindly loving to, in this case, it was my mother, that I almost would give up my life of being happy and all the healing I did and all the money I spent and all the trips I made to actually really try and heal this. I was still carrying this, what I would call blind loyalty to her, because there was this almost an unwillingness to let go of the victimhood, to let go of feeling that somehow certain types of men would keep me keep me in a way that I had to rebel against, so that I wouldn't become my mother. So that is one example, and that is why it's called blind loyalty. And that is how, when you start to look into your own life, you might be able to see that although you know so much, you've been studying, with one of the greatest teachers of our time, break the habit of being yourself, close the gap between the person that is not creating that horrible reality to the future self, you might still not be able to feel free to really let go. And that could be because of this blind love, this love that goes so far that would almost, yeah, what they call in constellations, sacrifice our happiness because we love people so blindly. And of course, luckily, constellation work is here to show you that there's a way out, because otherwise we wouldn't be here talking about it.
So when we are able to, so constellation work is really about finding the love, reconnecting to our system through love. And when we are able to shed the entanglement and just be in the love, we can, we have the freedom now to make choices that are pleasant to us, that are our choices, that are good for us, that are good for our growth. And not just that, but also we feel worthy and we feel like we have a permission, because in this process, when we are detangling from our ancestor about the family, there is a process that happens between those two individuals in a specific way that both of the people are okay with this, not being to be undone, because our ancestor actually doesn't want us to carry it. And we just do it subconsciously. And when we let it go, they're also relieved because it's theirs. And we get to then be free without feeling guilty that we will stop carrying this. And then we can just move on to the things we want to move on to without a limit.
Yeah. So let's go to this this very important term, which comes very much from the constellation community, which is belonging, the will to belong, the desire to belong. And also, of course, when you don't belong, it feels like death. Yeah, of course, when you were talking about tribal communities or villages, if you were excluded, you would die. So, but in the family constellation work, we are shown that blind love, we can even we can be driven by blind love in such a way that we want to belong to systemic patterns, even if we didn't know about them. So for instance, a child could repeat, let's say, an excluded family member because they were, like, let's say, the black sheep, and this child has never heard of this family member. Yeah. So, but in other examples, you could think about blind love, where people become all, let's say there's addictions in the family. It could be that certain members start to inherit, or inherit is the wrong word. They start to repeat the patterns of maybe marrying people that or have addictions, or they become themselves addicted, and they literally it can help them feel as if they belong, because they don't feel free to surpass the level of happiness or success of the people in their family. Yeah. So the other day I was working with a group of my clients, and we were talking about Good Will Hunting. If any of you have seen that movie, Good Will Hunting is a very, very good example where somebody consciously, out of blind love, decides to not become this super genius math wizard because he comes from a blue collar background. Yeah. So these are ways that you can find out if I'm feeling stuck, or if I'm feeling I can't move ahead. Is there something in me that knows deep inside of me that if I would break through and be happy, I would be successful, I would thrive? Who would I be betraying, or who would I feel guilty to? Yeah. So this is very important. This is all done subconsciously. None of us are doing it consciously, but this is like some kind of deep loyalty to the people that are suffering. Could be your mom, it could be your dad, could even be a dad that you hate. You still could be loyal to the dad that you hate. So there's a lot of mystery when you start to read the case studies, when you actually do the constellations yourself, where you understand that this interconnectedness of how we are holographically connected, and how we actually love each other, even though maybe consciously we hate each other, is very, very mysterious, and it's actually super moving. And for me, and probably for Selen as well, when you enter into the constellations training, the biggest thing that will happen to you is, I think, that you become so much more compassionate with your judgments, because you see that people are not doing things out of free will. You start to question free will. And maybe that's something that Selen and I can talk about. But people that so-called self-sabotage, or always choose the wrong partner, or they fail in certain things, you know, when you see that in constellation and you've done enough workshops, then you think, wow, it feels like we have free will, but maybe we don't. It's hard to exert free will. But over time, you know, people wake up more and more, I feel, as they do the constellation work, because what they also see is that this blind love is not serving anybody, not serving anybody.
Yeah, so during the constellation, we have an intention, right? The client has an intention and is there to heal something. And so the facilitator, who is basically the person leading the constellation, will ask you know, the client to pick a person from the group, or sometimes it's like these little toys here. I don't know if you see it. If it's not, if it doesn't happen in the group, to represent themselves or a family member. So we are meditators, so for us it's easier to understand, for most of us, you know. But everybody, I mean, I've never had a situation where the person said, I don't feel any change, I don't feel anything. I mean, as soon as you accept to be representing the father of the client, your energy completely shifts, and you start feeling, I don't know, like, oh, I have this rage in my throat area, or this or that, like, you know, complete different emotions, or I have pain on my knee suddenly. And that is a beautiful way of seeing for the client from a distance. It's like they're almost like they're watching a movie. They're not involved in it. They just get to watch it. So
yeah. So, and this is always the most mysterious aspect of constellations. So what is very important is that we're not acting, we're not role playing. People are literally downloading. They become part of the system as if they were in the systems. And I've done many workshops here. I don't know whether Henrik is here, but that Henrik and I, we used to organize workshops together in London when I just graduated. And we would do things with books as well. And people would literally, without having read the book, they knew what the book was about. So it's like this non-local consciousness that is invited to be channeled through people, so that we find out the real hidden motifs behind an entanglement, and we try and find the solution for the client or for the system.
it's basically like an iCloud system where we store information, the client and the representative just has the access to the information. I guess that's the best way of putting it.
Yeah, so it's almost like, the way that I see it, it's like a constellation shows you the living map of the hidden dynamics, or the hidden reasons, the hidden facts, so-called real facts, that have actually also impacted you. So for instance, as an example, whenever I work with people from whose ancestors lived in Second World War torn countries, often there is some kind of entanglement with the suffering, or the losses of the ancestors that did have family that died, that did have to flee their country, that did have bankruptcies. And we, as the new generation, we haven't experienced any of that, but somehow our soul is still feeling that, like the echo, and we're still in somehow our energy body remembers the trauma of maybe even one uncle that was in prison, but that we never knew. So all of these things can impact a system and impact individuals, and they show up in, you know, in ways that you wouldn't suspect. So this is why constellation work is not a formula. It's not a cut and dry cookie of, oh, you do this, you do this. You literally, we have to find out what is going on. Even if we can interview the client in all ways, the constellation is always some kind of, you know, we really have to be aware as a facilitator to find out what is actually going on here.
So the constellation makes the invisible entanglements and loyalties really visible in this process. While we watch the constellation unfold, it's very clear to the clients as well as the rest of the group. And once that they see the entanglement, the healing process can start, because as you know, if we don't know, we don't know. But once we know, then we can make different choices. And then once the once the client is ready, the energetic movement happens, whatever it needs to happen happens. And then the client has the permission for themselves to make other choices for their lives.
So yeah, you have different types of constellations. The one that is the most dramatic and where you actually can really be baffled, I would say, especially if you haven't done them before, is an in-person constellation where you find a local person that is working in this field, and you either sign up as an issue holder, that means the client, or you go and you are a representative. And you have the facilitator, and if you're an issue holder, you can choose representatives that can represent yourself or the issue, like for instance, you know, your money or your health or a goal that you have, or maybe something to do with your relationships. And then the people that are not chosen are observers, but sometimes the observers are also constellating a part of the system that hasn't been invited. So for instance, as an example, I've done, when I did a constellation for my issue with, I think, a career, the person that I was working with was a very famous constellation teacher. He said, this is not about your work. This is about the countries you lived in. And I was like, really? I didn't get it, right? I was like, this is definitely not about the countries that I lived in. That was my ego. But when he constellated China, and he constellated the country that I was born in and the countries that I moved to, I think all the observers, like all the people that weren't even chosen, they were literally crying. So, you know, I have goosebumps right now, because it's like sometimes we think it's this thing, but it's something completely different. And this is the way, you know, this is the way the wisdom of constellations can be really, really quite baffling. And it takes a lot of experience, I feel, to actually really know which direction to work in as a facilitator. But if you would ever attend an in-person constellation, I'm sure that you will show up at the right workshop, because there's always this element of synchronicity, where you go to and which workshop and who you're going, and in what constellation you're asked to be a representative or just an observer. But it is powerful nevertheless for everybody involved.
And then there's individual constellation, where the facilitator works with the issue holder alone. And these are usually held when there is, when the client has a hard time sharing it with other people, when it's a big secret, when it's something that is they're very vulnerable about, or like for other reasons that they can choose. So in this situation, we use, I'll show you my different options. Like I use like these pegs that have different colors. I use these natural stones. I use this kind of stones. I use different characters. So I just have them all available. And I just trust that the person picks the right one for the right situation, person, or whatever it is. And then we can also use puppets paper, these other things. So it's not really important. Or we can just say, grab something that you see here in this room that who would represent, I don't know, your mother, for instance. And the field really does play really interesting things, because when you just grab anything in the room for this to represent a certain thing, that can have an impact. For instance, I'll tell you a funny thing. So these characters I always use, and sometimes my clients will just pick them, and then we put them on the table, and they stand up. They stand strong, like perfectly, but sometimes they fall, and it's really interesting. And today actually it happened again, and then we put a strength, like a support for this representative. And then I just put it up, and it stood up like all by itself. It's the same table. I didn't touch it. I didn't do anything. And sometimes even these puppets really show us energetically, they tell us like people do. So it's not less effective than the group, but the purpose and it also depends on the client. So for us, it's really important that they feel comfortable, because if you're not comfortable, then there is you're not going to let the field do its thing.
So what can we constellate? Well, actually anything, because everything has consciousness and everything is in relationship with you. So you could, when you train, you do constellations on everything, but at one point you start to see that it is not just, the book that you want to write or your company. At one point, actually, even before I knew about Dr. Joe, I was so impatient with doing constellations and people feeling stuck, that I actually had the idea of putting in a future self. And when that idea came in, I immediately implemented it, and I said to the person, please constellate your future self that already has resolved this problem. And the person had a piece of paper, he stood on it, and he felt so much clarity, and he could turn around to his present self, and it was a different constellation. So even before I knew about quantum potentials, because that was not a word that I knew about in 2008, I think I discovered Dr. Joe in 2010, and he wasn't talking about quantum potentials then. He just had his first book about the brain, and then later on he had You're the Placebo, and he talked about quantum potentials in a much later stage. So I realized that right now, because we understand the framework of all dimensions, all time happening now, and all these different boxes that exist, that there is way more that we can work with in constellations, and also your future selves that have already resolved this issue. And so mostly constellations would look at the past, because we are entangled and we're trying to resolve something so that we can be more in the present moment. But some people like me choose to work more with goal-oriented, forward-looking constellations, where we're actually looking at what would you like to achieve and what is standing in the way, what is it that you need to resolve to actually be open and ready to receive these new quantum potentials. So yeah, so it's a super interesting I don't know whether Henrik is here, but Henrik and I, we have done a lot of fun constellations on concepts like books or fairy tales. We once did a constellation workshop about the funny archetypal pattern of princesses that needed to be saved by princes. So we literally had a whole workshop where we bought all these like crowns and capes and whatever of princes, and literally there were men that were princesses and there were women that were princes. But it was nevertheless, it was a really funny workshop, because this archetypal pattern of people, the damsels in distress that were waiting for a Prince Charming, we didn't play that out, we started constellating it. And so yeah, we also, I think, constellated the movie Shrek because we loved the movie so much. So you can imagine you can have really fun constellations where you really look at an archetypal pattern, or you can do the deep healing work where you have to actually look at your own entanglements, and those are always a bit scary. But nevertheless, they can be super, super healing and very moving, and something could open in your heart that other work might not open. Yeah.
Yeah, I just add that sometimes deep healing work can also be fun. So it doesn't have to be painful, you know, it can be really fun to constellate.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a book called It Didn't Start With You, and it's really beautiful because, and we can just generalize it to all areas of our lives. Because as you see in this tree, you know, like the roots are connected, and they all look like they're separate trees, but they are actually completely entangled, right? You know, we could constellate on that. And so we sometimes feel, oh, I'm all alone in life, but we are not actually. Once we get into the process, once we get into, you know, even just to start, we start the work, sometimes we let our ancestors come. Sometimes when I start a constellation, even when I'm facilitating or if as a client too, I say, you know, my ancestors, you're welcome to come. I want to feel you. Or maybe I call for one only. So that field, once you connect, once you're aware of it, I'm talking like Dr. Joe, like think about space and time, you know, the space we get into, and then we get all that information. So once we put our attention to our ancestors and to the knowing field, it will support us and give us answers, you know. And then we'll really know that we are not alone. We are never alone, even when we feel the loneliest. And as soon as we connect and we realize how crowded actually we are, then, you know, the knowing field, just by connecting also will just start fixing, like start not fixing, start undoing knots and start, you know, showing us information then we can do the work with. And it's really, I think that sentence is a very deep and good sentence for us to keep for all areas and in general, you know, because we tend to blame that it's my fault or this. It's nobody's fault. Like Angelique was saying earlier, it's in the field. We are connected. Our soul, of course, chooses this for a purpose, for a reason, but we don't have to be stuck there. We can heal it.
Yeah, yeah. And when I talk about the knowing field, for instance, I was doing a personal constellation on some, you know, in a period where I was really deeply in depression. Like I think I was in depression for like a whole year, and I didn't even know I was in depression. So I was always in energy healing trainings and, you know, doing a lot of different modalities where I was clearing myself, like the release technique and EFT classes, etc. So it was never in my mind that I was going to take a pill or something. So when I understood about constellations and I started looking at my depression, I was doing a session with my mentor then. And then all of a sudden, the field gave me the information about my basically two ancestors that were never mourned. And the second one was really, really bizarre because it was like a really weird way I even found out about him. So basically, the depression I had, I thought was related to breaking up with somebody that I really loved. But the depression was so deep that the mentor was guiding me to find out who has not been mourned in my system. And all of a sudden, this information about a young brother of my father that died at a very early age came into my mind. And I never think about him. I never ever, never ever do we talk about him, which is, of course, why this has been unmourned. But nevertheless, the knowing field gave me that information. And when we were doing the honoring and including this soul that hasn't been mourned. So imagine that you have a family and this child dies. There's deep mourning about this child, but it has not been mourned. So this mourning process then gets taken on by people who are very psychic or who somehow are chosen by the system to heal it. That was me. And so this information all of a sudden came to my awareness. And although I thought, no, I'm deeply depressed about this boyfriend, it was actually this part of my family system was like almost like it was all stacking up. All the unmourned losses were stacking up. So this is one of the ways that you can understand that although your conscious mind is thinking, this is my mourning or my depression, your depression could be about other things that have also been unmourned or unhealed in the system. So that is what I think this sentence is trying to explain.
To you or me?
Oh, you take it.
So I like to look at things as like from a detective's point of view, instead of why did this happen to me? I'm so unlucky, to actually, oh, what is here to look for? Like, what am I supposed to understand from this? And let me just like go into the scene and just try to find out. And that's more playful, that's more curious, that's more fun. So once we look at it as from the lens of quantum detective, I think that should be our new motto now that I think of it, because it's for me, it excites me. Rather than a problem that needs fixing, then things really do change. That's why I said, even like heavy things can be fun to heal. It's and light also to heal. Sometimes there's crying involved. We need to release emotions. We need to release, whatever is needed to be released. But it doesn't have to be painful. It can be fun if we look at it from a different perspective of, let me look with my, what do you call this? Anyway, that. Make it bigger and see, like, what can I see that I'm not seeing right now? So I just want to give an example. When everything else in my daughter healed except for her very intense, very, very intense gluten intolerance. When I mean very intense, I mean she could not sit next to somebody eating gluten. It was not that she couldn't consume. Our house was like a laboratory. We couldn't have gluten in the house. So it was very limiting, as you can see. And I didn't understand at the time, but it happened in a more natural way. I'm very good at surrendering, so I always call myself lucky. I had a hard time putting intentions on the contrary, so I was just surrendering too much. So I was just lucky that life took me to the solution for her. But like looking back now, what I would do is I would just be like, okay, what is it trying to show me? So because now I see it from that kind of a level, I don't really need to have big problems anymore, because like in a small warning, I'm like, okay, what am I supposed to understand from this? So and that's what I like to do in the constellations, you know. Okay, you know, the client comes with an intention, with an issue, and with an intention to heal it. And so I just get curious to see, okay, what are we supposed to find? Like, what are the clues? What are the things we need to look at? Who do we need to follow? So representatives are really important in that process. Or like Angelique was talking about, sometimes the observers are just sitting there. Well, they're not just sitting, they're also creating, they're also participating in this field, because there's a field and we need to protect this field. So they're active participants, but sometimes one of them will say, oh my God, my heart is like this, or like they just do this dramatic thing, and suddenly you have to pay attention, and then you just invite them in, and then, okay, what's going on, and who do you think you are in this constellation? So I just like, you know, that it lightens up the issue, and we just have detectives.
And because constellations are quite mysterious, we end up always being quantum detectives anyways. And I know that when I was trained in 2007, 2008, and so Selen is training now 15 years later. So I know that there was and all the time there is evolution, because people are, you know, they're evolving the understanding of the information that is coming to us for the healing. And I know that the Professor Albrecht Marr that I was working with and who I love, he said at one point in one of the closing workshops, he said, we should not be trying to police the past. Yeah, because sometimes the constellations would have so much emphasis on the injustices and the trauma of the past that almost the client became like invisible, because the trauma of the ancestors took over, and the client was somewhere in the constellation, but the facilitator was trying to heal the ancestors. And that again doesn't work. So so this is why I think the quantum detective thing that we have to be aware of as a facilitator is that we need to always think about the client. We need to think about the choices that the client has and the resistances that the client has and how ready the client is. Because once we start to invite the quantum entanglements, literally all these other voices could take over. And that is, I think, also why, you know, there's a lot of awareness that we need to develop as a facilitator to really know the balance between how are we going to help the client the best and help the system the best. So yeah, I don't know, Selen, you had this beautiful story about how you did a trust fall, actually, because it was a trust fall. She did a trust fall where at the Dr. Joe event, where she thought about herself, letting go of something for herself, and then her daughter healed. I mean, if you don't think about the quantum field, this would be complete magic, right? You would be like, how is this possible? This is like another person in another country. Her daughter had nothing to do. But this to me is a complete example of entanglement, right? I don't know, Selen, maybe you can share something. And also please share the last thing that happened when you were talking about another girl, because I think that is so amazing as well of what happened. Yeah.
Yeah. So what happened during the trust war, or before the trust fall, you know, they used to, so this is, they used to do this before COVID, and it's not happened, and, you know, they don't do it anymore. But a team leader actually works with you, and you don't just go and jump, you take your time. And I was, you know, I had a lot of fears from heights. I didn't fear anything else, but like huge fear from the heights. And I had to like wait for the people in front of me, and each person took 10 minutes. So imagine that, like I was for like 45 minutes in this like stair that was like kind of moving with the wind, and it was really uncomfortable. So it was building up, my fear was building up more and more and more, and I just wanted to just jump and be done, but no, like we need to take our time. So what happened is that because I was shaking and all over the place, this beautiful team leader, then I got to see 3 years later, to thank him, put put my hands on my heart. And he said to me, what do you want to leave behind with this fall? So the answer didn't come from my mind. It came like right away, you know. Of course, it came from the field, but my mouth said it. And then I said, what are those, like, you know, they're not even related to one another. And the answer was my fear of heights. I was feeling very, very, like on a daily basis, guilty, because it was really, talk about entanglement. It was coming from family members. Like all the women in my family felt guilty. So it was normal for me to feel guilty too. And so it was for my daughter. So the guilt, and then I said, my daughter's gluten intolerance. And then I heard myself and I said, wait a minute, what did I just say here? It doesn't make any sense. Because that's the time I didn't really understand it yet. So, but you know, but I was, this was going to be my only event, believe it or not. And I did go to many other events, but it was very difficult. So I said, I am in 100%. I'll do whatever he asks us to do. That was also being present in the meditations, 100%, doing whatever I needed to do. So the team leader said, if you're afraid of looking down, look down before you jump. So I could have avoided that and just jumped, but I said, no, I'm going to look down because I'm very afraid of looking down. And so the healing process actually happened on top of the thing, not after I jumped, you know, it was like all the preparation. And then once I decided to jump, so it would have been easier if somebody pushed me, but of course they don't. So I had to do it. So it's the leap of faith. Like, I know nothing is going to happen to my physical body. I'm attached, but it's comes the body. So I did it. And then I knew all of those things were gone. Now I understand their intention. It's the entanglement and all these things. Well, the story that Angelique asked me to share is a friend of mine's daughter. So we went to a restaurant all together about a month ago. And so she was eating, you know, something, and her mother at some point said, I think it's enough. I think you should stop. And I looked at her because she's not like that. I said, why do you do that? And she said, well, because she has gluten issues. And if she can handle a little bit time to time, but if she eats too much, then she has behavioral problems. She has like both neurological and intestinal problems, like exactly like my daughter. So, but she could still get away with eating a little bit. My daughter couldn't. And so I said to them, I'm going to tell you a little story. And I started telling our story, and my daughter was sitting across from me. I said, well, look, she's eating everything, right? So, and I explained the whole thing. So both parents and the daughter were like this, just like, you know, just, they were just listening to me. There was nothing else, you know, they were in it fully. And so the mother said, yeah, I'll tell you the trustful in a minute. Yeah, after I finish the story. Okay. The mother said, is it possible for you to do some work with my daughter after our vacations? Because we were going to go away, they were going to go away. So we weren't going to see each other for a month. And she's 15 years old. And I said, okay, I'm happy to do it. And then they took a vacation. They went away. And then, so her daughter had stomach problems. So they went to the doctor, and then they explained to the doctor, oh, she can't have gluten and blah, blah, blah. The doctor said, well, you know, it's important to test for it because otherwise you won't know. So why don't you have her eat gluten for a month and then test in the blood for celiac, gluten intolerance, and gluten sensitivity, which is a normal way of doing it, by the way. So the daughter was really happy. She's like, okay, so she had all the excuses to eat gluten. And so she ate gluten for a month. And then it was time for us to all be back here. And then the mother called me. She said, you're not going to believe what happened. So she started eating gluten for a month to be tested. But we noticed that she had nothing, no symptoms. And I know when that happened. I know that it's you. By telling that story, you changed, you know, something changed. And she just, I mean, we all accepted it. And we believe that, you know, because it was a real story. I wasn't making any story up. It was a real thing. And so the mother knew, she had a knowing, just like I had a knowing the moment that my feet touched the ground, that my daughter in a different continent was healed. So the mother had a knowing, and I said to her, it may not be related to her, it may be just you. So it may be just the mother needed to hear that to heal, or give permission for her daughter to heal. So sometimes we don't even need to do much work. We just need to allow it. Maybe it's just a time, sometimes when we are ready, things happen to us. And that doctor actually also initiated it. And I said to her, it's the universe is funny. The doctor told her to eat it for a month for you to see it, So the trust fall is something that they used to do, where actually, the trust fall is something else. But anyway, so this is, you would just be physically challenged to be able to put what you do in the meditations in real life. So, stressing the body on purpose in a safe setting, so that when you go back to your life, like when you're stressed, you know how to handle it. So, they make you like breathe, like, and open your heart, connect to your heart, and see yourself in the future, like, well and good. And then that's how you do it. But the trust for itself is also something that everybody had to do, which was basically you would stand up with your back turned, and your team would hold something for you to fall into. So, and you have your arms like this, and when you're ready, you ask the team, I forgot the exact words, but like, are you ready to hold me or something? And then they would say yes, but everybody's concentrated. And then you let yourself go, fall backwards, which is not such an easy thing to do, by the way. And basically your team supports you and, just holds you. So that's what it is. Yeah, but yeah, ready to surrender. Thank you, Ellen. Yeah. But I want to go back to this, just describing this thing. Would you like to do that, Angelique? Because I think it's important.
Yeah. So every time I work with clients, and also, after working on my own, own healing of blind loyalty to my family, I realize that what gets us stuck is actually staying in resentment, staying in judgment, and staying in cold-heartedness. So the opposite is to free ourselves, we have to forgive, we have to accept the injustices, the betrayals, the losses, the cold-hearted behaviors of ancestors, fathers, ex-husbands, children, countries that came in and robbed and raped our countries, all of that. And if we don't do it, we literally, through the loyalty, hold on to personality traits that keep us stuck in what I would call, you become a vibrational match to what you don't want. Yeah. So, and most of the time I've seen, and I am the prime example in my own life, is the resentment is often towards our own parents and our own siblings. It very often starts in the family. And the amount of times that I had to do forgiveness rituals of traumas of childhood, and of course for an adult and a child, traumas are different. Something that might have been like, oh yeah, whatever, as an adult, for a child is deep trauma, abandonment, insecure attachment, and all of that. Most of the time, we're still working with forgiving our parents for not loving us, for not having been there for us, or for our parents treating each other horribly. So most of the time, when I think about my own journey, I, for instance, was definitely resentful towards my father because of how he treated my mother, but I was also resentful to my mother for not being courageous and leaving him. So I was really, really carrying a cross of anger in my relationships that innocent men would have to put up with. I was living with this judgment, and this judgment allowed me to actually not be a vibrational match to men that were stable and that were commitment material. Because of my resentment and my unwillingness to heal, and I've done a lot of constellations, and I wasn't as far as I am now. I literally didn't understand that I had to become a different personality. I literally was holding on to resentment and judgment and cold-heartedness to the archetype of what my father represented for a long, long time. And that is how I was single for so many years. And this was me having spent a lot of time and money doing all the meditations. But from that perspective, I can say, I have actually forgiven myself for holding on to resentment for so long, because it takes time. And for me, it took time. For other people, it might be one constellation. I don't know about you guys, but for me, it took time. And what I see with my clients is everybody has their own divine timing to be ready to let go of the burdens of resentment, the burdens of judgment, and the burdens of cold-heartedness towards people that were our primary caregivers or our ex-husbands, ex-boyfriends. And the only thing that I can say is that when I could take responsibility for having repeated the so-called painful patterns in relationships, and I stopped blaming men or my parents for it, I literally became sick of blaming my parents. I heard myself just talking about them again, and I was like, Angelique, stop it. This is not about my parents. This is about myself. And by that time, I was much more into Dr. Joe's work, because I think even though I understood Dr. Joe's work, I wasn't completely ready to not be a victim. And I think this hidden victimhood is such a big, medallion of protection that we carry around with us. And when I understood that, I was ready to do the deep work, take complete responsibility. And that was a time when I worked with a lot of different beautiful healers, including Selen. And that episode has really healed me into who I am today, where I really try to, as much as I can, I'm not always successful, I try as much as I can to take 1000% responsibility for all my emotional reactions and responses. I try to get out of the program as soon as I feel that I'm getting entangled. If I get angry, I ask myself, whose anger is this? If I see myself acting like my dad, I'm like, who is this? Is this my program, or is this me? And so what I wanted to say is that we can only free ourselves when we stop justifying why we cannot forgive. We can only free ourselves when we stop thinking we are a victim. This is all Dr. Joe material. Any other school that you go to, you'll hear the same thing. But we are the only ones that can really let go of this, Dr. Joe could call it addiction, attachment to being right, but being unhappy and single and not thriving, and etc., etc. I don't know whether that makes any sense, Selen.
Yeah, of course it does. Yeah. Yeah, so it's just shifting from one energetic reality to another one, basically.
But it's very difficult if for your whole life you've identified yourself as a warrior woman that was independent, then I was going to behead all these men that were horrible because you had a chip on your shoulder. So what does that mean to you? I think, if there are things that you really find hard to let go of in terms of forgiveness or acceptance or compassion, then I think maybe constellation work could help you, because when you have done enough constellations, the field will always choose you mysteriously for roles where you will have to learn the lessons to evolve from unlove to love. That's what I found. That's really what I found. And I think, And maybe some of the people that have done more constellations can also attest to that. So yeah, maybe we're ready for this, or would you like us to go and show us the workshops? And maybe there are some questions right now. What do you think we should do, Selen?
Yeah, I think we should give space for questions if there's any, or comments.
Yeah, so I'll stop the sharing so we can see all the faces. Anybody would like to ask a question, please feel free to do so. There are no stupid questions.
You can also privately send us so nobody knows your name. And then we read the question, not your name.
Yeah. We cannot hear you, Rohini.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi, it's so nice to see you again, and like we haven't seen each other. I missed those sessions of ours. And thank you both for this session. This is new for me, and I've had one session with you, Angelique. But I have been thinking about the family constellations and been staying away from it, knowing that I need to do this, but something is just preventing me. But at the same time, there's a question that I'm always thinking about, and that's coming from certain beliefs that should we really be, um, you know, is by getting into the constellations, are we disturbing ancestors in some or the other way? Because it's a soul which has moved on. And there are a lot of scriptures which say that you should not you should just let them go, and whatever you have to deal with, just do it silently. But by getting into a constellation, is it disturbing them? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, my answer to that would be is actually you're also giving that soul permission to let go. And because when you carry an entanglement from that soul that passed, that moved on, it's a two-way thing. You're entangled in two-way, and when you let go of yours, when you thank them, so because the process is really a two-way process, that you see it, and then either you or the other soul, depending on the situation, lets go of the entanglement, and you thank each other, and you say, okay, from now on we will be just bonded by unconditional love. They take on what belongs to them, and they're very happy, because it actually bothers them when we carry. They don't want that, it bothers them when we carry their burden on our shoulders. So it's not necessarily disturbing them, it's really doing the healing work, short amount of time, and letting them go, for everybody, for everybody to be free, basically. So it doesn't also repeat, because if we don't heal it, somebody else in our family line can also take on this burden. So it can be, it can go until it's healed. Angelique, what do you have to say for that?
I would literally say, if you go to a constellation, you will not constellate the ancestors that don't want to be acknowledged. There is a wisdom in the field, and those of you who've done quite a lot of constellations, or who've done, who have trained in it, or those of my clients that do it with me week after week, you only will invite the ones that are ready to be part of the healing. And I know from my training, when we had a lot of Second World War people, Jewish descendants, Irish, French Revolution, all of them, everybody showed up. All the United Nations of people showed up, including China for me. And what I've seen is for instance, if you did a Second World War one, yeah, so that kept on. We did a lot of Second World War constellations because it was so fresh in our mind. And you would see that certain people would want to follow the dead, the ancestors that lost their lives. And what you literally see is that the ancestors don't want you to do that. They literally send you back. You know, literally angels will be constellated, literally out of nowhere, and push you away. And so sometimes constellations can have a divine aspect dependent on the intention of the facilitator. Because sometimes if a constellation is full of suffering, let's say death, dead people who never healed, sometimes the facilitator will have to bring in support, and that could be angelic, and it could be the future selves or the higher selves. Even when perpetrators in families or in a system are constellated, what I have seen is that by bringing in the perpetrator and acknowledging the fate of the perpetrator in having to be a killer, it wasn't like we were disturbing our ancestors that were killed by the perpetrators. Actually, when we were acknowledging the, let's so-called systemic innocence of a perpetrator, because they were also in a trance, in a psychosis, as they call it, and they had to be a perpetrator. They were entangled to be a perpetrator in the systems that we found ourselves in. When we acknowledge the innocence of a perpetrator in the system, because they also had no free will, it feels like the victimhood of the victims is also healed. So when you look at these type of very difficult concepts, perpetrator, victim, killers, rapers, all of that stuff that is really heavy for us. I mean, it can, even when you work with very difficult concepts, the healing can be so deep. And sometimes one of us has to be the vehicle that comes in and brings it into a constellation. I hope that that makes sense. So, but you know, I'm just giving some really like really out of the box examples so that you understand that we will never dishonor, you know, the ancestors. And it's a very important concept in the constellation world that we always honor the ancestors. It's deep honoring of their fate.
Yeah, thank you for that, because I think I wanted to hear that and I wanted to be clear on that, because I was having this conversation and something was going on in my mind, you know, at the back of my mind. I just wanted to hear this, because I agree with you that it would only be those who want to be freed themselves from something that they are not letting go, and so that would be healing of both the souls as such. So I agree. Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you. Very good question, by the way. It would make sense to think that. Yeah. I don't know whether other people want to ask a question or have a comment. I can imagine that this is a deep subject. Maybe we'll show you what we have in store in our workshop schedule. Where is it? Yeah, so as I said, Jeremy, would you like to share something?
Sure. I just wanted to say that I had done this work with Angel, and I'm interested to do it some more. I am a little bit more skeptical maybe than some, and I really do believe in this work though, because I'm a big fan of psychodrama. I did psychodrama for a while, and I understand the psychological underpinnings of how we do what we do and how we relate to our world based upon our past history. But the more that I worked with the internal family systems, I realized that there is, the quantum entanglement and those experiences and how those thread in. So I continue to be a student of this, and I also know that there's not just internal family systems, but there's another corollary that worked very close, and I'm trying to remember the name of it. But these are just things where, like, once I realized that, like, generational linkages to our history and, family, and the concept of legacy that you maybe heard today, I just realized that, like, it's not just what I'm doing. And that book that was quoted, It Didn't Start With You, I've heard a couple of other people talk about that as well. And, also just from doing Joe's work, learning about, like, Bessel van der Kolk's The Body Keeps the Score, and the whole sense that we have, this sort of endomorphic collection of all of our past history. This is just the type of thing that I have a very big interest in. Plus the combination of all of that with Angel and everybody else's association with Dr. Joe's work, in the sense that it's not just doing, like, psychology or talk therapy, it's doing, the other dimensional work that really drew me in. So I just wanted to comment on that, to share that with you all.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Yeah.
So basically, Selen and I were trying to think of what type of workshops can we do so that we can help people in this group. And we have a workshop schedule. I'm trying to find the present button. Okay, wait, sorry, I'll do it now. So we decided on Wednesday evenings in Europe, because we both we're both in Europe now. And so next week, so we alternate. So what are you doing next week, Selen?
Oh, what am I doing? So I just had a list of things to work on, and then I said I'll just randomly put them in order. So I don't even know, but I have to read it. So yeah, for next week we got ancestral patterns in dis-ease. I never like to call it disease, and imbalances. So I think that's a good place to start, as that was where I had my magical moment. And so basically, the titles will just kind of lead us to choose the client, the issue holder. But in all of them, in all of these things, whoever shows up, like Angelique said, there's a reason for them to be there, and everybody gets what they need from it, even when they're not a client. So that's the fun part of it. Anyway, so I just moved on to something else, but so it's the ancestral patterns and dis-ease and imbalances, not necessarily diseases, but just anything that we are blocked about.
Yeah. And so we want to explain that we have free workshops and paid workshops, and the workshops where we actually do the work are paid. And why? Because when we go deep, we go very deep. And I can imagine that you don't feel safe, and I wouldn't feel safe, if people who are not even paid, who are just like sitting on the phone or walking in a park, listening in to you resolving your family trauma. I mean, that just doesn't feel right. And also in Constellations, there's a very important rule about the balance of give and take between people who provide a service and the people receiving. It's a very big law that is always being broken in a way. And that then leads to suffering. So, we are not able, because of this specific teaching, to actually provide free workshops. I do free work with my clients when I use them as guinea pigs, but that's another thing. They are very courageous, I would say, because they're used as guinea pigs. But what I do, so when I do a free webinar, or Selen and I do a free webinar, it's really more about explaining concepts so that you know that every constellation person you go to will work in a different way, because we've all come from different trainings. We all had our own different traumas to work on. So my obsession was always using the quantum field of infinite possibilities to really understand how can I close the gap between myself and what myself now in let's say in the old self, going towards the box that I want to go to. So so next on the 27th of September, I want to talk about how I started combining other healing and clearing modalities with constellations work to actually show people where they really need to clear a certain pattern, or where they really need to make a decision about a certain pattern. Otherwise, they would literally be stuck. So yeah, Wednesday, the 4th of October.
Yeah, the 4th of October. So we'll be doing, maybe hoping that, you know, somebody will get this magic like I did, and work on a client, not necessarily with an expectation, but with an intention, let's put it that way. You know, healing something about them, and as a side effect, with a possibility to heal a family member, to also let them go, let them, you know, free them as well.
And this happens a lot with the parents, right? When parents have children that have, let's say, a disease or something like, I don't know, some kind of problem, or they're very, you know, they have mental health or an addiction, and the parents are like, oh my God. And then, you know, I've seen a lot of parents actually come to constellation workshops for their children. It happens a lot. Yeah. So after that, I felt inspired to do a quantum potentials constellation, where we actually look at a very important subject, which is why are we not getting our quantum potential despite all the walking meditations or tuning into new potentials or affirmations? Are we actually open and ready to receive? And this is a very big, eye-opening type of constellation that you could be doing if you think, oh God, I've done everything.
That is important, yeah. So on the 18th, we'll work on a past life, and we'll heal a trauma, so that we don't need to carry it into this lifetime, or we may be already carrying in this lifetime, but the healing needs to happen in the source. So yeah, we'll look into a deeper place and to past life, which always excites me.
I've never done the past life constellations. I thought it was a theta healing thing, but you see now the new generation of teachers, they teach different things. It's amazing. Yeah.
Well, you know, you can also do it with theta healing, of course, which I always used to use. And now I usually ask the client, like, what do you want to do? And if they don't know, I go with what I'm led. You know, I don't even decide. It just, but yeah, it's the same way basically of constellating, but it's really fun because it's the unknown for everybody. So you don't even have to do it blind. You know,
Yeah.
you can just, you know, dive into it.
Yeah. So on the Wednesday, the 25th of October, is something that I really wanted to do for a long time, because I feel that this is a big issue for a lot of healers. And that is the issue of money and abundance and the healer profession. So we're not talking about the healers that are doing it for a hobby, that are not even, you know, trying to put themselves out there. They're just trying to heal their families and, you know, doing card readings on the side or whatever. No, we're talking about when you actually decide to be a healer as a profession and you want to make money with it, what are the issues that show up? Because I know from all the healers in my surroundings that all of us, and I'm actually surrounded by a lot of healers that have multiple careers. So very often we also have a corporate career, meaning like I'm in executive search. I'm in recruitment. I do trading. I mean, and actually, I feel like, you know, there's a lot of, for me, myself, I feel a lot of resistance to actually earning money as a healer. And of course, that would mean that I couldn't be a healer and I couldn't use what I'm so passionate about to actually help the world. So when I did my own money constellation, my healing work showed up. And money could have shown up for any other profession that I came in, but it showed up for my healing work. And it was such a slap in my face and my ego that I actually really decided my money is really upset with me. And there were parts of me that showed up as really angry with me for not charging money and not taking action and not believing in myself. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is really causing a lot of frustration. It's almost like I kept this talent of mine that, according to my husband, gives me the biggest joy. I kept it in a little box and locked. And I said, no, I'm not going to look at you. I'm not going to make money with you. I'm going to look at all these other directions. So what in your life is keeping you from maybe working on this money block that might be allowing you to actually, when you actually resolve it, step in the world as a healer, because the world needs it now. So that is one of the workshops that I
No,
wanted
don't
to
go,
do.
stop there, stop there.
Oh, yeah?
Go back. That constellation I've had to do, and guess with who? So yeah, it was really wonderful because I, as a healer, I had a blockage, and with Angelique, I don't know if you remember, we actually looked really, really deep into it, and then it was partially related to a past life. So we did a past life constellation, actually.
Did we do constellation or theta healing?
We did both, I think. I mean, I had huge blockages, like, you know, I really had to work on it. And it did really help me. Like, it really, I think I'm free from it. Although I'll see on the 25th if I'm completely free, but you know, I believe I am. And for me personally, it was something to do with a past life, and I was a healer then as well, and I was really you know, it was not a good thing what happened. So yeah, and I carried it into this lifetime, and it's not a surprise that I chose this profession to heal it in this lifetime. So it was really beautiful for me.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think there's actually special courses about the healer blocks. There's many of them, but I think it was something I actually want to look at more the quantum potential for the healer profession in regards to money and abundance, and step away from what we have been reliving, what we have been living. So that is, maybe I need to retitle this workshop. So what can people expect when they do healing work with Selen?
Well, you know, I have the titles here, like I mentioned. I don't know what they can expect. I think for me, it's all about reconnecting to the heart, finding the love. Actually, love is always there, even when we really genuinely hate somebody or like hate a situation. I do use it in my personal life a lot. You know, we had a really funny instance that you know, our daughter was finishing up elementary school last year, and her teacher said she's not ready to move into middle school. And she was so ready, and we took her to the middle school interview, and the teacher's like, oh yeah, we're really happy to have her. So I said to our daughter, you know, they love you too much in both schools, so let's see what's going to happen. So so because it was just the two of us, my husband and I wanted to do this blind for both of us. So I did this blind choice thing where we put the old school, the new school, another option. I always put that surprise, like, other option. And I mixed the things up because normally the facilitator knows about the blind constellation, but I was both facilitating and being the client. So I really wanted both of us to feel it, into it. And it was one was a really clear yes, the other one was like no. Like I felt like I was in a prison with one, and then I was so free and open with the other. And I really was hoping the middle school one was the open one. And then we turned the papers, and yeah, she was ready, and so we enrolled her, and she's super happy actually. So so it is reconnecting to your heart, to whatever it is that you work on, you know, like healing disease ancestrally, or money, anything. So like today I had a constellation with somebody we healed a pattern that she hadn't mentioned to me, because I usually talk beforehand, and so I couldn't find anything. So she said, I really want to free me and my daughter and my grandkids from this. And I said, I don't really see the pattern in the forms that you filled out. And then she started telling me, I didn't want to write it there. And so every single person on both her ex-husband and her family, not every single person, but somebody in every generation were abused sexually, and including her daughter. And she's like, I really want to heal all of this. So it was a very intense, but there was some crying involved, but not that much. So basically, when we found the love and the connection, and we let go of the necessity to be loyal even to an abuse, because that's what our subconscious does. She was like ready to she left the constellation. I'm really curious to see what she has to tell me, because she was like so ready to move on with her life. She went to the unknown. Actually, I still am keeping the thing here. She like moved into the unknown, and she was like, there was nothing holding her. So I want to see that, and I want to see that both in me, in my life, when I work for myself, and same way with my clients. So I love that Rumi's saying, the breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. Once you're awake, you're awake.
Yeah. When we know we're entangled, and then we have to work with the systemic solutions. Even when you as an individual make a choice that could free yourself, be aware that you could be freeing your system. Yeah. And so when you do a piece of work, you might still be stuck in, let's say, unforgiveness. Like me, when I did a piece of work with my parents for the first time, my father completely shifted the way that he was with me. He was much more loving. He started sending me a lot of emails saying he loved me and missed me, which he never did before. And that was after one constellation. But although he shifted, I wasn't shifting. I was still resisting his love, which tells you a lot about how much we are resisting love. We say we want love, but then we're resisting it. And because I was still loyal to my mother for decades. And so this is why, I think it's very important to understand the hidden loyalties and the traps of it. And because it makes you feel good, but you're actually really stuck. So when I do constellation, I'm much more working with quantum potential. So I'm really obsessed, like completely obsessed about manifesting. Yeah. So I really see it as a game. And I see it more as closing the gap between where you are right now and where you want to go. And I really believe that what you seek is seeking you. I really, honestly, I really, really know that. So when we are then saying no to it, there's something in us that is not open and ready to receive. So when I play games, I always use the David Hawkins scale. So I always talk about, where are you now? Are you now in anger, grief, apathy, pride, desire, or are you in acceptance, which is a very high level of consciousness? One of the new workshops that I'll be launching in a few months is really going into the book Science of Getting Rich, because to me that book really talks about the quantum and about the law of resonance, of actually when you're stepping into love and gratitude and creative thought instead of competitive thought, how you can start creating life. And we play a lot of games where we inspire you to really step into the new self, almost like a walking meditation 24/7, but then in the actions that you have to take either in your love life or in your business. So as I said, you can constellate everything. So all the chapters in this book are amazing and mind-blowing and literally like a thought-provoking. For instance, chapter 1 is called The Right to Be Rich. And I know every time I say that, I know people are saying, wow, we could be like doing a whole year of constellations around this topic of the right to be rich. Because if you really look at, the right to be rich, we are actually programmed to feel guilty about wanting money. Yeah, we don't even see money as an energy exchange. We actually feel better about giving than receiving. And so, but this book goes completely against all of this. And at the same time, it talks about fifth dimensional creation in chapter 4. So what I like to do is I like to study a book, like literally ask people to read a book over and over again and to discuss it and to write about it in a private forum and to do like workshops around it where people have to apply it. And then we do constellations around it. And there's a difference between knowing a concept and actually having to constellate a concept. So this is how I like to work. And yeah, so we have a Telegram group, Selen and I. And so if you join the Telegram group, you will be updated on the things that we do, the things that we feel inspired to do. And if you have any questions, yeah, please let us know. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Sorry? What did you say?
Me? Somebody else was speaking, I think. I didn't catch who, though.
So maybe, has anybody learned something new? Could you maybe share what you've learned? Because I can understand if you haven't been reading the constellation books, maybe some of the concepts that we're sharing is quite different.
Yeah.
Maybe I can say something. Hello.
Hi, Maren.
I sneaked in very late, I guess, and so I didn't get everything. I hope that I can have the recording then afterwards, and really looking forward to this because I really enjoyed now what you yeah, what I caught, and I'm really curious for September, October. Now I have some Wednesday appointments, I guess. Very quick. Cool. Thank you so much. And let's see where it gets us all. Really excited.
Thank you.
Gonna be there at least sometime. I don't know if I catch it all, but at least I will definitely be there. Thank you.
Yeah.
You'll catch the ones that you need to catch. So
yes.
You will suddenly show up. You will literally, things will obliterate from your diary and you'll be there. That's how it works.
I know it's really interesting because today I had a talk with a coach, and it's kind of like what you are talking about right now is like all the subjects are really like it was in my field already, so it's really funny.
Yeah.
We know how it works, so it works.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
I wanna explain something about how Selen and I decided to work, because normally if you go to let's say a 3-day workshop, let's say you have 10 or 15 people, everybody does their piece. But if you do an evening workshop, it's more like we have to then let the field decide. Yeah. And so what that means is when we surrender to the wisdom of the field, we work with the theme, the field decides the person that can allow the healing to happen for everybody. And as an example, when I did my first constellation, I was very scared because I was doing this energy healing training. I was doing 2 of them at the same time. I'm always a bit over ambitious, but I really wanted to heal. And so my teachers, who were Barbara Brennan healers, they said, don't do the constellation first. Do it first for somebody else as a representative and then do it for yourself. But the time that I showed up, I had heard from all my classmates that everybody was crying their eyes out. And I was like, I don't know what I want to do it, but I did it because I wanted to understand why the teacher said, don't talk to your parents because we don't recommend you to talk to your parents, do a constellation. And I was like, I don't even talk to my parents, so that's not a problem. But I understood that Dutch people want to talk to their parents, which then doesn't work out. But so I went to my constellation, and what happened was that I chose a girl, a Dutch girl, that showed up, and she was me. And after the constellation, she came to me and she said, I knew you were going to choose me. And I said, why? And her mother was there, and she said, I am divorced from a man, a Chinese man who lives in South America, and I was born in South America, and I'm Chinese. And he said, because of you, I understand him finally. And so can you imagine, I still have goosebumps that in Holland, there's not a lot of Chinese people from South America. We're quite a little bit of a minority of a minority. But that on that specific day that she showed up, that I was there and that I chose her and that she could resolve this animosity or resentment that might be there with the father of her child. For me, that was deeply, deeply, deeply meaningful because I really understood there is no coincidence. When you make a decision that you are ready, or even to show up without being an issue holder, when you're ready, things will start working through you. Even if it's not your constellation, you will get the exact downloads, insights, or I don't know, shifts that you need for your piece of work. Yeah. And that constellation where this person that was divorced from a Chinese man that probably did something not so nice to her showed up. I mean, that was the constellation after which my father completely changed his relationship with me. And he doesn't know anything about what I'm doing. He doesn't know I'm doing healing work. I never talked to him. I really hated him, but he started reaching out to me all the time. So I can really tell you that there is magic in this work, that sometimes when you feel very stuck and you feel open to it, show up, because you don't know what might happen. And even if you're not chosen as the client or issue holder, although you paid the price, you will get exactly what you need. And that's all I want to say.
That is really, really true. And I actually, each time I've had, I was in a constellation, I took something with me, and it was really powerful. Even when I was an observer, I was not even representing. And each time there was a shift that in me that happened. So that's why I ask people to write an intention for themselves, not for the client. So the client writes an intention, talks about the intention, like what they want to achieve from this constellation, but the others do too. And I know Angelique does that too, because, and I write my own as well. And then at the end, I ask people, you don't have to share it, just read your intention. 100% of the time, people get their intention, like they get what they wanted from that constellation for themselves, even though it was not about them, the constellation, And just like I shared at the beginning, when Angelique was doing a constellation on somebody else, and suddenly I appeared as the so this was about birth mother adoption, situation. I appeared as this birth mother who was so in love with her child and so proud, and did actually her best, did actually something out of like a huge amount of unconditional love to give her baby for adoption, because she thought that was the best option, that she would be raised in a much better environment. And I'm ashamed now to say that I used to judge that. And I used to be like, how can you do that? I'm a mother myself, so I could never imagine myself giving my children up for adoption. But that really changed a lot in me. And I said, wow, that is unconditional love. And for me, it's more of a selfish thing. Like, I want my kids near me. But the bigger thing to do is for them, to make that decision for them, because, we get pregnant for different reasons, not always when we are ready. So to me, it was a huge shift in the perspective, which I really, really absolutely needed. And same thing happened. I suddenly, after my 5th event, I was checking my emails on the way back from a long trip from Cancun back to Europe. And I had 4 clients during the week I was at the week-long who emailed me. And my only thing that I would work with anything. accept a child who was abused. And for me, it was a definitely no, because it's something that I didn't think I could handle as a healer in general. So 4 people contacted me during that week who were abused as children. And I, if it was just one person, I think I would have refused it. But I said, 4 people, there must be something in this. And I accepted them. And actually, the work was not that difficult for me to do. And I really felt compassion and love, even to the abuser, because abuser, like I saw from his perspective, what the situation was. And I was so happy and satisfied at the end of all those 4, healing sessions, because I saw the relief in the person. And, the person let go, adult person who carried this all their life since childhood, let go of something so big for them. And, they were reborn into something else. And I said, I want to experience this, and I'm happy to, so I have no limitation now about that, because something that I thought was really difficult was just, I was facilitating, and it was a beautiful thing. So it's also trusting what the universe brings us and not resisting it. And sometimes we come in late to the constellation, it's perfect, we don't know anything about it, and then suddenly we are representing somebody we have no idea. And it's trusting all of that is just beautiful, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I also wanted to say that I always do my constellations blind, so nobody actually even knows what they're representing. So I get the download very often, either just an hour before the workshop, what I need to do. I follow it because I allow the field to work through me. And so often if you are an issue holder and you write an intention, you don't even share it with me, but I just trust that the intention will be clarified. And often we just work with the group, not even knowing what they are. So they don't know whether they're money, they don't know whether they're you, they don't know whether they're your business, or whether they're your a block that you have, or your future self, or a quantum potential that has a message for you. So it is very much because it's quite blind and hidden, nobody can say, oh, now I know everything about this client. No, actually, they don't have a clue. But as you do more constellations, you start to trust that everything that is coming through you is you, not you making it up. It's really the field is giving you that information. So, and then as you do it more and more, you also trust more that you are psychic. We are psychic. We already are psychic. Yeah. So there's many beautiful things that can happen. Yeah. So looking forward to seeing you.
Yes, thank you for listening. And
we will come. And that what is amazing is that Selen knows that I have a broken back now, and I wanted to go to my constellation in presence, but the teacher that is doing it, she's really giving us backpack with a bottle of water to materialize the burdens that we have in life. And I told her, I'm sorry, but I couldn't come for now, because for 3 months I have to carry nothing. And then both of you appear up and say, we can do constellation even in video. So that's marvelous. So yes, I will come in for sure.
And you don't need to carry anything physically.
Yes, and I will do the 25th of October because it's my birthday. So I will do that one for sure. Okay.
We hope. Well, I don't even know what is my workshop or not, but I will be there for Selen's workshops, because every constellation person works differently. So I think I can learn a lot from her as well. So I'll be there as support. So anybody, if you have any questions, feel free to message me, and so you'll get probably 2 different answers from me and Selen, but it doesn't matter, because the field always gives us the answers anyway. So yeah. So
Thank you, everybody.
thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Hope to see you
Thank
then.
you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Bye.